The first warning came not as a sound, but as a whisper of data. Deep within the reinforced observation complex nestled beneath the Martian surface, a network of quantum sensors trembled with a message that would change everything. Holographic displays flickered to life, mapping the systematic destruction of the Orion Confederacy with cold, precise lines of crimson and silver. Dr. Elena Rodriguez leaned forward, her hands hovering over the quantum interface. Years of careful preparation had led to this moment. The Zarkov Imperium moved with a precision that spoke of generations of warfare, consuming entire star systems like a mechanical plague. Civilizations that had stood for millennia were being erased in mere solar cycles. The observation team worked in near-perfect silence. Each member wore a neural-linked interface that allowed them to process information at speeds that would have been impossible just decades earlier. They were humanity's eyes, watching, analyzing, understanding an enemy that believed itself unobservable. Chief Analyst Michael Chen manipulated the holographic display, pulling apart the Zarkov invasion patterns. "Look here," he murmured, highlighting a series of seemingly random attack vectors. "It's not just destruction. There's a systematic approach to their conquest." Nearby, Dr. Samira Khan studied the spectral analysis of destroyed planetary systems. Her fingers danced across specialized interfaces, extracting microscopic details from the remnants of civilizations crushed beneath the Zarkov advance. "They're not just conquering," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're harvesting." Each conquered world provides resources, technology, strategic positioning. The vast underground complex hummed with potential energy. Hundreds of specialists from diverse backgrounds worked in perfect synchronization. Engineers, xenolinguists, quantum physicists, and strategic analysts. They represented humanity's most carefully cultivated resource, adaptability. On the main display, another star system winked out of existence. The Zarkov moved with a choreographed precision that suggested something beyond mere military strategy. Each conquest was a calculated step in a larger design, a galactic chess game where entire civilizations were nothing more than disposable pieces. They'd eliminated the last defensive platform of the Orion Confederacy, Michael announced, his voice tight with controlled tension. The holographic representation showed a vast expanse of destroyed ships, broken orbital installations, and the cold, empty spaces where entire worlds once existed. Elena Rodriguez studied the display, her mind racing through potential scenarios. Humanity had watched, prepared, and waited. The Zarkov believed themselves unobserved, a fatal miscalculation that would define the coming conflict. "Begin quantum encryption sequence," she commanded. A series of complex algorithms began to weave themselves through the observation network, creating a communication web that could not be detected by conventional means. Every piece of data, every observation was being carefully preserved, analyzed, and prepared. Dr. Khan approached with a preliminary report. "Their technological base suggests a biomechanical integration far beyond anything we've encountered. But there are vulnerabilities. Their centralized command structure creates predictable communication patterns." The underground complex was more than a research station. It was humanity's insurance policy, a testament to a species that had learned from its own tumultuous history. Wars, ecological challenges, internal conflicts. Each had been a crucible that forged a unique approach to survival. Michael highlighted a series of quantum anomalies detected at the edges of the conquered territories. "Something doesn't add up," he muttered. "The precision of their attacks suggests more than simple military conquest. There's a larger purpose." Elena understood. This was not just about watching. This was about preparing a response that would fundamentally alter the galaxy's understanding of humanity. Outside the complex, Mars stood as a silent guardian. Orbital platforms and hidden defense networks waited, their true capabilities masked by careful misdirection. Generations of preparation had led to this moment, a species ready to transform from observer to participant. The last transmission from the Orion Confederacy faded into static, but in the depths of the Martian complex, Humanity was just beginning to write its own story. The Zarkov believed they had won. They were terribly, fatally wrong. The lunar fabrication complex stretched across 3 massive craters, a masterpiece of engineering that defied traditional spaceship construction methods. Here, humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of interstellar warfare, one molecular layer at a time. Dr. Kaido Nakamura walked the primary development floor, his augmented reality interface projecting complex holographic schematics around him. Each workstation represented a breakthrough that would have been considered impossible mere decades ago. Material science, quantum computing, and adaptive engineering converged in ways that challenged every known principle of spacecraft design. The key is nonlinear adaptability, he explained to a group of young engineers gathered around a prototype hull section. The material seemed to shimmer, its molecular structure actively changing in response to simulated stress conditions. We're not just building ships, we're creating living systems that can think, adapt, and respond faster than any known technological framework. Nearby, advanced molecular fabrication units worked with microscopic precision. Nanobots assembled components with a level of intricacy that bordered on biological complexity. Each ship was more than a machine. It was a potential ecosystem, capable of self-repair, strategic reconfiguration, and near-instantaneous computational analysis. Dr. Rebecca Chen, the lead materials engineer, demonstrated a new hull composite that could literally reshape itself. Traditional armor is static, she explained, running her hand across a section that rippled like liquid metal. Our design responds to incoming energy signatures, redistributing molecular density to minimize damage. It's not just protection, it's active defense. The lunar facility represented humanity's most carefully guarded secret. Multiple layers of quantum encryption and advanced stealth technologies ensured that no external observation could penetrate its true capabilities. What appeared to be a standard spaceship construction site was actually a revolution in technological design. In the Quantum Computing Center, entire walls of advanced processors worked in perfect synchronization. These were not mere calculation machines, but adaptive intelligence networks that could process strategic scenarios faster than any known computational system. Each scenario was a potential battlefield, analyzed and reanalyzed with millisecond precision. We've moved beyond predictive modeling, explained Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the chief computational strategist. Our systems don't just predict enemy movements. They can generate potential response strategies across thousands of variables simultaneously. The ship designs defied conventional understanding. Where most spacefaring civilizations focused on energy weapons and shield technologies, humanity was creating vessels that were fundamentally different. Each ship was a complex adaptive system, capable of psychological warfare, technological subversion, and strategic reconfiguration. A test chamber demonstrated the potential of their approach. A prototype ship module underwent stress tests that would have destroyed conventional designs. Instead, the component adapted, redistributing energy, changing its molecular structure, literally learning from each point of potential failure. We're not building weapons, Kaido told a group of senior researchers during a strategy review. We're creating a new paradigm of interstellar interaction. Each ship is a potential diplomatic tool, a rescue platform, a strategic hub. The facility's deepest levels housed even more revolutionary projects. Quantum entanglement communication systems that could transmit information across impossible distances. Adaptive propulsion technologies that could manipulate space-time itself. Neural-linked control systems that blurred the line between human and machine. Young engineers worked alongside veteran researchers, their neural interfaces allowing near telepathic levels of collaboration. This was more than a design process. It was a collective evolutionary leap. Rebecca pointed to a holographic display showing the molecular restructuring of a ship's hull. Traditional armor is about resistance, she explained. Our design is about transformation. We're creating vessels that can literally change their fundamental nature in milliseconds. The lunar complex was humanity's insurance policy. Years of careful preparation, of learning from every conflict, every technological challenge, had led to this moment. They were not just preparing for a potential conflict, they were reimagining the very concept of space warfare. As the fabrication units continued their precise work, something extraordinary was taking shape. These were not just ships. They were the physical manifestation of humanity's most profound capabilities: adaptability, innovation, and an unprecedented capacity for strategic thinking. The Zarkoth would soon discover that humanity was anything but a simple, predictable species. The universe was about to change. The first moments of contact were surreal in their simplicity. Deep space sensor arrays along the outer solar system perimeter detected the approaching Zarkoth scout fleet with clinical precision. Captain Michael Chen studied the incoming data streams, his neural interface parsing information faster than any conventional computer could process. Incoming vessels, he announced quietly to the bridge crew of the first human deep space response ship. Approximately 17 primary combat units with supporting reconnaissance drones. The Zarkoth fleet moved with a choreographed precision that spoke of centuries of refined warfare. Their ships resembled organic crystals more than traditional spacecraft, sharp, angular structures that seemed to pulse with an internal energy. Biomechanical design suggested a civilization that had long since merged technology with living systems. In the command center, strategic analysts watched with calculated calm. This was the moment they had prepared for. Years of observation, of careful analysis, of understanding the Zarkoth's invasion patterns had led to this single point of potential conflict. Sensor technician Dr. Sarah Kumar tracked the incoming vessel's approach. "They're using a standard expansion pattern," she observed, her fingers dancing across quantum interface panels, exactly matching the reconnaissance strategies we've observed in previous conquests. The human response fleet waited, nearly motionless. From external scans, they would appear almost primitive, a handful of ships that seemed almost laughably inadequate compared to the approaching Zarkoth force. It was a carefully constructed illusion. Commander Elena Rodriguez reviewed the final tactical preparations. Every ship was more than a mere weapon. It was a complex adaptive system designed to challenge every conventional understanding of space combat. The neural-linked crews moved with a synchronicity that defied traditional military hierarchies. "They're scanning us," announced the communications specialist. "Preliminary analysis suggests they're categorizing us as a pre-spaceflight civilization." A subtle smile crossed Rodriguez's lips. Underestimation would be their first mistake. The Zarkoth scout fleet began their standard approach vector. It was a method that had worked countless times before. A show of overwhelming force designed to trigger immediate surrender. Massive energy signatures powered up, weapon systems preparing for what they assumed would be a routine pacification. In the command center, Michael Chen watched the incoming vessels with clinical detachment. "Initiating first contact protocol," he said softly. What happened next would become legendary in galactic records. The human ships didn't move traditionally. They seemed to ripple, to flow between spatial coordinates in ways that defied conventional understanding of physics. Where traditional spacecraft would make linear approaches, these vessels danced, changing vector, velocity, and configuration with impossible fluidity. The Zarkoth scout commander's communication panel erupted with impossible readings. Their targeting systems couldn't lock. Weapon predictions became meaningless as the human ships moved in patterns that seemed to predict and counter potential attack vectors before they could be conceived. "They're not just avoiding our targeting systems," the Zarkoth fleet commander muttered in their native communication frequency. "They're rewriting them." Indeed, the human ships were doing something unprecedented. Their advanced quantum communication systems were subtly infiltrating the Zarkoth vessel's computational networks. Not with aggressive intrusion, but with a kind of mathematical poetry that rewrote fundamental operational parameters. Weapon systems began to malfunction. Navigation became unreliable. The Zarkoth found themselves facing an enemy that didn't fight like any species they had encountered before. It wasn't destruction they were experiencing. It was systematic, surgical deconstruction. First contact engagement complete, Michael Chen reported calmly. Zarkov scout fleet neutralized with 0 human casualties. The bridge crew remained focused, understanding that this was merely the opening movement of a much larger conflict. They had not just defended themselves, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. The Zarkov had believed they were approaching another simple conquest. They were terribly, fatally wrong. The battle space became a canvas of impossible movement. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the forward reconnaissance vessel, her neural interface merging with the ship's computational systems in a dance of unprecedented complexity. Each vessel in the human fleet was more than a weapon. It was a living, thinking entity that responded to conflict with a fluidity that defied traditional understanding of space combat. Incoming energy signature, called out the sensor specialist. Multiple Zarkov battle groups converging on our position. Sarah's eyes flickered, processing multiple strategic scenarios simultaneously. The human ships didn't just move, they anticipated. Where traditional military doctrines spoke of attack vectors and defensive positions, these vessels created their own mathematical language of conflict. A holographic display showed the incoming Zarkov formations. Massive ships with biomechanical designs approached in what would have been, to any other species, a perfect attack formation. To the human fleet, it was an invitation. Initiate quantum resonance pattern. Sarah commanded. The ships began to move in what appeared to be a chaotic dance, but there was a profound logic beneath the surface. Each vessel adjusted its position not just in three-dimensional space, but in probability matrices that confused and dismantled the incoming Zarkov attack strategy. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the lead strategic analyst, explained the approach to a group of senior commanders. "We're not fighting their war," he said, pointing to a complex holographic representation of the battle space. "We're forcing them to fight our war." The Zarkov relied on predictive combat algorithms that had served them well in hundreds of conquests. These systems worked on established patterns of movement, energy discharge, and tactical response. Humanity's approach systematically destroyed those patterns. Ships would seemingly teleport, not through actual faster-than-light movement, but through quantum manipulation that made their precise location impossible to calculate. Weapon systems that should have been devastating found themselves targeting empty space, or worse, redirected back towards their own origin points. "It's not about defeating their ships," Sarah explained to her bridge crew. "It's about defeating their understanding of conflict." Each human vessel carried an advanced computational core that was more than a navigation system. It was a living strategy engine that could generate and discard thousands of potential engagement scenarios in milliseconds. Where the Zarkov saw a battle, humanity saw a complex mathematical problem to be solved. Energy weapons that should have been devastating found themselves absorbed, redirected, or simply rendered ineffective. The human ships didn't just defend. They transformed the very nature of the conflict. A Zarkov communication intercept revealed their mounting frustration. Their battle algorithms, which had conquered entire civilizations, were being systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through a kind of mathematical judo that turned their own strategies against them. "Quantum Entanglement Communication Network Engage," reported the communications specialist. The human ships were now sharing information faster than light, creating a battle network that was more organic than mechanical. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching from the Strategic Command Center, understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was a fundamental challenge to the Zarkov's understanding of technological warfare. The ships moved like liquid mercury, changing configuration mid-battle. A vessel that appeared to be a support craft would suddenly become a primary offensive unit. Defensive systems became offensive weapons. The entire concept of a fixed battle role dissolved. "They're adapting faster than we can analyze," a Zarkov commander transmitted in a moment of rare vulnerability. The transmission was immediately analyzed, its very existence providing additional tactical information to the human fleet. As the battle progressed, it became clear that this was more than a military engagement. It was a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to conflict, to technology, to the very concept of strategic interaction. The Zarkov had conquered countless civilizations. They had never encountered anything like humanity. The tactical symphony continued, each movement a note in a complex musical composition of conflict, innovation, and unprecedented strategic thinking. The most powerful weapon was not a ship, not a weapon system, but information itself. Deep within the human strategic command center, a team of linguists, cultural analysts, and communication specialists worked with a precision that transformed warfare into an art form of psychological manipulation. Dr. Rebecca Chen studied the intricate communication patterns of the Zarkov, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that decoded linguistic nuances most species would never perceive. "It's not about what they say," she explained to her team. "It's about the spaces between their words, the cultural assumptions that drive their communication." The human approach was revolutionary. Where traditional military doctrine focused on physical destruction, this team was dismantling the Zarkov's entire psychological infrastructure. Communication specialists began to broadcast carefully crafted messages across multiple frequencies. These were not simple propaganda, but complex psychological constructs designed to exploit the deepest vulnerabilities in the Zarkov's collective consciousness. Each transmission was a multilayered weapon. Surface-level communications appeared to be standard military exchanges, but embedded within were quantum-encrypted messages that subtly rewrote computational understanding. The Zarkov communication networks began to experience cascading uncertainty. "We're not just intercepting their communications," explained Michael Rodriguez, the lead strategic communication analyst. "We're redefining their entire conceptual framework of conflict." Historical records of Zarkov conquests were carefully reconstructed and rebroadcast, but not as straightforward historical documents. These were living narratives that highlighted the emotional cost of their expansionist strategies. Each conquered civilization was given a voice, transformed from statistical data into deeply personal stories of loss, resilience, and potential. Zarkov soldiers began to experience unprecedented levels of cognitive dissonance. Their automated communication systems, designed to maintain absolute morale, started to malfunction as complex emotional narratives infiltrated their networks. Dr. Sarah Kumar demonstrated a breakthrough in linguistic manipulation. "Language is more than communication," she explained. "It's a complex neural network that shapes perception." The human team had developed communication algorithms that could literally rewire conceptual understanding at a linguistic level. The psychological warfare went beyond simple communication. Human ships began to demonstrate capabilities that defied the Zarkov's understanding of technological possibility. A vessel would seemingly appear and disappear, not through traditional stealth technology, but through computational manipulations that challenged the very concept of physical presence. Communication intercepts revealed growing uncertainty within the Zarkov command structure. Their perfect, hierarchical system began to show fractures. Soldiers questioned strategies that had been unassailable for generations. The very foundation of their military doctrine was being systematically dismantled. "We're not destroying their infrastructure," Michael noted during a strategic briefing. "We're giving them the opportunity to question it." The most profound weapon was empathy. Human transmissions began to include carefully constructed narratives that highlighted the potential for peaceful coexistence. These were not simple peace proposals, but complex psychological constructs that challenged the Zarkov's fundamental understanding of interspecies interaction. Quantum encrypted messages carried multiple layers of meaning. A transmission that appeared to be a standard military communication would simultaneously communicate tactical information, emotional complexity, and philosophical challenge. Dr. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the entire operation with a calm that belied the complexity of their approach. "Warfare is no longer about physical destruction," she explained. "It's about expanding the boundaries of understanding." The Zarkov found themselves facing an enemy that didn't just fight differently. they conceived of conflict in an entirely new way. Their communication networks, once a source of absolute control, became channels of uncertainty and potential transformation. Soldiers began to question. Command structures began to fragment. An empire built on absolute certainty found itself confronting the most terrifying possibility, that their understanding of the universe might be fundamentally limited. As the psychological campaign continued, it became clear that humanity was offering something more profound than defeat. They were presenting an alternative, a way of existing that transcended traditional concepts of conquest and resistance. The Zarkov had conquered countless civilizations. They had never encountered a species that could transform conflict itself. The psychological frontier expanded, a battlefield more complex and profound than any physical space could contain. The liberation began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Aboard the forward reconnaissance vessel, Captain Sarah Chen studied the holographic displays showing the liberated territories. Each rescued civilization represented more than a strategic gain. It was a fundamental reimagining of galactic interactions. The human approach was unprecedented. Where most conquering species saw occupied territories as resources to be extracted, humanity saw potential. Quantum communication networks began to weave between previously isolated civilizations, creating a web of communication and mutual support that defied traditional understanding of interstellar relationships. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez reviewed the initial contact protocols with his team. "We're not here to replace their systems," he explained, pointing to complex cultural mapping displays. "We're here to help them rebuild their own." The first liberated worlds showed remarkable resilience. The Korax, a species that had been under Zarkov occupation for 7 generations, began to rediscover technologies that had been systematically suppressed. Human support teams didn't just provide technical assistance, they offered educational frameworks that empowered local reconstruction efforts. Communication specialist Elena Kim worked directly with liberated civilization leaders. "Our goal is to provide tools, not solutions," she would explain. Each intervention was carefully designed to maximize local agency, to restore not just technological capabilities, but cultural dignity. Quantum communication networks became corridors of hope. Civilizations that had been isolated for generations began to share knowledge, resources, and collective experiences. The human fleet didn't just provide military support. They created infrastructure that allowed for unprecedented levels of interstellar cooperation. The Zarkov watched in mounting confusion. Their entire conquest strategy relied on absolute isolation, on preventing communication between conquered territories. Now, those same territories were becoming a network of mutual support that grew stronger with each passing solar cycle. Scientific teams worked alongside local researchers, helping to restore technologies that had been deliberately suppressed. But this wasn't simple technology transfer. Each collaborative project was designed to build local capacity, to create sustainable knowledge ecosystems. Dr. Rebecca Chen demonstrated a breakthrough in collaborative research methodology. "It's not about giving them our technology," she explained during a strategy briefing. "It's about creating frameworks that allow them to develop their own." The liberated territories began to form a complex, interconnected network. Each civilization contributed unique perspectives, technological insights, and cultural knowledge. What had once been isolated populations became a growing collaborative system that challenged every existing model of interstellar interaction. Military strategists discovered something profound. These liberated civilizations weren't just potential allies. They were becoming active participants in their own liberation. Training programs focused on self-defense, technological resilience, and collaborative problem-solving. Humanitarian support went far beyond traditional models. Medical teams developed adaptive treatment protocols that respected local biological and cultural diversity. Educational initiatives created frameworks that allowed each civilization to integrate new knowledge while preserving their unique cultural identities. The human approach was fundamentally different from any previous galactic intervention. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't even traditional liberation. This was a systematic process of empowerment that respected the fundamental dignity of each encountered civilization. Zarkov communication intercepts revealed growing panic. Their entire system of control was being dismantled not through military force, but through a more profound mechanism of collaborative transformation. Each liberated world became a node in a growing network of mutual support. Scientific discoveries were shared. Cultural exchanges became as important as technological transfers. The very concept of interstellar relationships was being rewritten. "We're creating something more than an alliance," Captain Chen explained during a strategic review. "We're creating a collaborative framework for galactic interaction." The liberated territories began to develop their own collaborative defense networks, not through military might, but through shared communication technologies, collaborative research initiatives, and mutual support systems that made traditional conquest strategies obsolete. As the network expanded, something extraordinary happened. Civilizations that had been bitter enemies under Zarkov occupation began to find common ground. Shared experiences of oppression transformed into collaborative visions of potential futures. The Zarkov had conquered countless civilizations. They had never encountered a force that could transform conquest itself. The unexpected alliances continued to grow, a living network of hope that spread across the galaxy like an unstoppable wave of potential. The battle for the Zarkov homeworld began not with a thunderous assault, but with a precise, calculated approach that defied every conventional understanding of interstellar conflict. Admiral Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic displays, each movement of the human fleet, a carefully orchestrated symphony of technological and strategic brilliance. The liberated civilizations had become more than allies. They were active participants, each contributing unique technological insights that transformed the very nature of the confrontation. Quantum communication networks hummed with a collaborative energy that made traditional military hierarchies seem primitive by comparison. Initiating first-wave strategic disruption, announced Captain Michael Chen from the forward command vessel. The human fleet didn't move like a traditional military formation. They were a living, adaptive network that could reconfigure itself faster than the Zarkov could comprehend. The homeworld's defensive systems were legendary. Generations of conquest had allowed the Zarkov to create a multi-layered defense grid that had repelled every known threat. Massive energy weapons, quantum interference fields, and biomechanical defense platforms created a seemingly impenetrable fortress. Dr. Sarah Kumar led the computational warfare team. "We're not going to destroy their defenses," she explained to her colleagues. "We're going to make them obsolete." The first wave of the assault was entirely digital. Quantum encrypted communication packets began to infiltrate the Zarkov defensive networks. These were not simple hacking attempts, but complex algorithmic constructs that began to rewrite the fundamental operational parameters of their defensive systems. Defensive weapons began to malfunction in ways that defied logical analysis. Energy weapons would suddenly redirect, quantum interference fields would collapse, and communication networks would experience cascading uncertainties. The liberated civilizations contributed in ways the Zarkov could never have anticipated. The Corax provided advanced computational insights. The Velinar shared breakthrough quantum communication technologies. Each species contributed a piece of a complex strategic puzzle. "It's not about overwhelming force," Admiral Rodriguez explained during the strategic briefing. "It's about systematic transformation." The human ships moved with an impossible fluidity. They didn't just avoid defensive systems. They seemed to exist in multiple potential states simultaneously. A vessel that appeared to be in one location would suddenly resolve in an entirely different strategic position. Zarkov command systems began to experience fundamental breakdowns. Their perfectly structured hierarchical communication networks became channels of uncertainty and potential rebellion. Soldiers began to question strategies that had been unassailable for generations. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez oversaw the psychological warfare component. Carefully crafted communication broadcasts began to penetrate the deepest levels of Zarkov's social structure. These were not simple propaganda messages, but complex narrative constructs that challenged their entire understanding of existence. The planetary defense grid, once considered impenetrable, began to fragment. Not through physical destruction, but through a systematic deconstruction of its fundamental operational parameters. "We're offering them a choice," Alina explained to her command team. "Not surrender. Transformation." The final assault was unlike any military engagement in galactic history. Human vessels worked in perfect synchronization with ships from liberated civilizations. Each movement was a collaborative effort that transcended traditional military doctrine. Quantum computational systems began to interact with the Zarkov's core planetary networks. These were not invasive attacks, but complex dialogues that began to rewrite fundamental operational parameters. The Zarkov homeworld's defensive systems began to experience a profound existential crisis. Weapons designed for absolute control found themselves reprogrammed into potential communication platforms. Defensive networks became channels for collaborative potential. Initiating final phase, Captain Chen announced. The human fleet didn't destroy. They transformed. Entire defensive platforms were systematically repurposed, their destructive potential redirected into potential for communication, for understanding, for a fundamentally different approach to existence. As the confrontation reached its climax, it became clear that this was more than a military engagement. This was a fundamental challenge to the very concept of conflict itself. The Zarkov had conquered countless civilizations. They had never encountered a force capable of transforming conquest into possibility. The final confrontation continued, a living testament to humanity's most profound capability, the power to reimagine conflict itself. The aftermath of the conflict was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where previous conquests had left destruction and power vacuums, humanity had created something entirely unprecedented. A collaborative galactic framework that challenged every existing model of interstellar interaction. Admiral Alina Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the primary diplomatic vessel, watching as representatives from liberated civilizations gathered for the first Galactic Collaborative Council. The room was a testament to diversity. Species that had been enemies for generations now sat together, sharing knowledge, resources, and potential. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, leading the cultural integration team, explained the core philosophy. "We're not creating an empire," he told a gathering of interstellar journalists. "We're creating a network of mutual understanding." The transformed Zarkov territories became a living laboratory of collaborative potential. Former military installations were systematically repurposed into research centers, educational institutions, and communication hubs. Each facility became a node in a growing network of shared knowledge and mutual support. Sarah Chen led the technological reconstruction efforts. Her team didn't just repair infrastructure, they created adapted frameworks that allowed each liberated civilization to develop its own technological pathways. The goal was not uniformity, but a rich ecosystem of diverse technological approaches. The quantum communication networks that had been crucial during the conflict now became channels of unprecedented cultural exchange. Species that had never spoken to each other began to share scientific discoveries, artistic expressions, and philosophical insights. "We're writing a new chapter of galactic interaction," explained Captain Michael Chen during a strategic review. The human approach had proven to be something far more powerful than military conquest. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies relationships. Humanitarian support teams worked alongside local populations, but with a critical difference. Every intervention was designed to maximize local agency, to restore not just technological capabilities, but cultural dignity. Educational programs were developed that respected the unique cultural contexts of each civilization. The economic models that emerged were equally revolutionary. Instead of resource extraction, the new framework focused on collaborative development. Each civilization contributed its unique strengths to a growing network of mutual support. Dr. Rebecca Kumar, leading the Cultural Integration Research Team, discovered something profound. The collaborative approach was creating something more than a political alliance. It was developing the new form of collective intelligence that transcended individual species limitations. Former Zarkoth military personnel found themselves integrated into reconstruction efforts. Psychological support programs helped them process generations of colonization, offering paths to personal and collective healing. It was not about punishment, but about transformation. The first interstellar university emerged, a collaborative institution where scholars from dozens of civilizations worked together. Research projects tackled challenges that no single species could have addressed alone: climate restoration, advanced medical technologies, sustainable energy solutions. Space exploration took on a new meaning. No longer was it about conquest or resource extraction. It became a collaborative endeavor of mutual discovery, with each civilization contributing its unique perspective and technological insights. The quantum communication networks continued to expand, creating a living, adaptive framework of galactic interaction. Information flowed freely, but with unprecedented levels of cultural respect and contextual understanding. "We're not creating a unified civilization," Elena explained during a diplomatic summit. "We're creating a collaborative ecosystem that respects individual diversity while finding common ground." Medical research teams developed treatment protocols that could adapt to the unique biological needs of multiple species. Educational frameworks emerged that could be customized to different cognitive structures, creating unprecedented levels of cross-cultural understanding. The remnants of the Zarkoth's hierarchical system were systematically transformed. Collaborative governance models emerged that valued individual agency and collective well-being. Each liberated territory began to develop its own unique approach to social organization. As solar cycles passed, something extraordinary became apparent. This was more than a political transformation. It was the emergence of a fundamentally new way of understanding collective existence. The human fleet that had once been a weapon of liberation now became a network of support, research, and mutual discovery. Each vessel was a mobile research center, a diplomatic platform, a channel of potential. The Zarkoth had conquered countless civilizations. Humanity had shown that there was another way. A new beginning stretched out before them, a future limited only by collective imagination and mutual respect.